Hello and welcome back to the MACS special podcast. In this third and final episode, Abbie asks Lord Blunkett about his life outside of politics and what he thinks about mainstream and specialist schools for people with disabilities. Lord Blunkett also talks about the important role that peer support and charities play in improving the lives of people affected by their disabilities.
What's the best thing about not being a politician?
The best thing, well, I'm still partly, aren't I, but it's at a much gentler pace. Not having to always do weekends. We're recording this on a Saturday afternoon, so I am doing a weekend, but so are all of you. You're doing it, Abbie, and those who have taken the time and trouble to travel a long way are doing it. But when you do it every weekend, weekend after weekend, doing advice surgeries, advice bureaus, going to community meetings, after a bit you stop enjoying yourself. And that's perhaps why, after 28 years of doing it, I decided that another 5 years would be too much. I didn't know there was going to be an election within 2 years of standing down in 2015, but I thought there was going to be a long period, and I thought, will I still be performing 150%? Will I still want to do it? Will I be really more grumpy than I usually am by Sunday? And, is it time to walk a bit? I'm president of the local Ramblers Association. Is it time to be able to go to football matches? I support Sheffield Wednesday. You could call it football. They've not been too good in this past season. And I'm now able to do so. Sometimes in crazy situations. My wife Margaret and I were recently at Ellen Road, the Leeds United ground, where Sheffield Wednesday were playing Leeds, and we were in the middle of a blizzard. And I think the match was very close to being called off. And I said to Margaret, do you think, this was in the second half, snow blowing in our faces, do you think we should go home? And Margaret said, don't be a wimp, we're saying it out to the end. So we sat there to the end. Fortunately, Sheffield Wednesday won 2-1, so that was a bonus.
Well, that sounds like you enjoyed yourself on that one.
I do. I get a commentary, of course, so I put the earphones on. The commentary was a bit strange at Leeds because it was by a local cable television. So it was more you got a kind of view of what was going on. I had to rely on Margaret telling me what was actually happening. But normally you get a radio commentary, and that brings you up to date, and you can feel the atmosphere and enjoy being there. People have often said, well, if you can't see, how can you get much out of it? Well, quite a lot of the time over the last 60 odd years since I've been going to football, I've thought I could do better than the manager, actually.
What do you enjoy doing now? I understand you're currently involved in teaching charity work?
Yes, I do both. I've been a board member of the National Citizen Service. 100,000 young people had an experience for 4 weeks. At the time they finished, in the English system, it's called GCSEs. It's different in Scotland. At the age of 16, having a period where they learn about themselves, but about volunteering, about community action, about citizenship, and I'm very pleased about that. That's a voluntary activity. I teach at the University of Sheffield. I'm very pleased to be able to do that. It's called Politics in Practice. So they read the academic books, and I tell them what rubbish the academic books are. And then they have to put it together for their dissertations. And,
that sounds
exams.
good.
And I really enjoy that. And young people are very sparky, very interested, and not as bolshy as we were when I was at university. Way back, I was a mature student in the sense that I didn't go to university until I was 22 because the school I went to didn't offer examinations. The guy who ran the school at the time, Dr. Langdon, doctor because he had a PhD, didn't think that blind children should be put in for public exams. As a consequence, at the age of 16, I didn't have any qualifications. So I went down to the evening, a number of us from the school, we were doing a commercial course, learning to do Braille shorthand and to type, word processing as it is now. And we went down for couple of nights a week to the local technical college and started to take examinations. I think if we'd, in my case, I think if I'd failed the first year, it might have dampened my commitment and enthusiasm, but by a miracle, a number of us passed and we went on to continue taking exams. And one of the teachers from the college, which was then based in Shropshire, but is now a further education college based in Hereford, the Royal National College, one of the teachers came down to the technical college in the evening with me and helped me get O-level physics, which was nothing short of a miracle. And I never forgot what he did. I wrote an obituary when he died 3 years ago in the Guardian newspaper, because you never ever do things on your own. It's always a two-way street. If you have to make the effort, but other people around you supporting you, just being there when you need a helping hand the most, that's about mutuality, isn't it? And if we could get that message across, that people can do it, but they need that helping hand to make it possible. What else would you like to ask me before we finish the interview, Abbie? Because you've done very well so far. You think she's done well? She's doing really well. I mean, you're a Sarah Montague on the Today programme in the making.
Well, the next question I have for you is sort of more of a personal question from my point of view.
Yeah.
And I can explain why. From reading your experience of boarding school, what is your opinion about visually impaired young people going to boarding schools?
I think it depends on when and for how long. And it has to be said, from all my experience, and I've been, for instance, to the Royal National College several times recently in Hereford, the world is very different to when I was at boarding school. I mean, the worst thing I remember about boarding school, to be honest, was the food. It was really do the boys hall stuff. And in fact, not long after this interview, I'm taking the whole of my family, my boys, two of Margaret's girls, my grandchildren, we're all going back to the school I went to in Shropshire, which is now a hotel. And I'm going to explain to them just what it was like. I ought to have said to the hotel, I'll tell you what, put 10 beds in one bedroom, shut the toilet off so we all have to use just the one down the corridor, and get people to sleep 10 in a room, and take the carpets up and switch the heating down and give us sausages 4 times for main meals on the trot. And that's what it was like. So my memories are a bit coloured by that, whereas today things are quite rightly a lot better. To begin with, schools and colleges are inspected, and people would shine a light very quickly on what was going on. I think it's fine if somebody's going for a purpose. If they're going to learn to read and write Braille or to do tactile maths and what have you, if they're going to get trained so that they're going on to a job, I can see why it would be sensible to bring people together. And you also learn how to muck in and to learn living skills, which are pretty crucial in a way that we didn't get taught. So it's a lot better in that respect. But going from the age of 4, which I did, to the age of 19, that wasn't a bundle of fun, because you kind of lost touch with home and with where you were brought up. And then you have to relearn how the world operates outside all over again. And of course, universities aren't for disabled, blind people. You've just got to muck in and learn how to do it. And so it was a bit like being dropped in at the deep end when I came out of the college. And that's why I think we need to open up as much as possible access to day-to-day facilities and to, where it's possible, into open education. These days, as you will know, Ellie, Abbie, far more youngsters have multiple disabilities than when I was a child, just because people's lives are being saved that would otherwise have died, and because many of the more straightforward ailments have been overcome, haven't they? So it's a much more complex situation now.
Well, you say about boarding schools today. I went to a boarding school. I actually went to your rival school, I must say. It was New College in Worcester.
You went to Worcester, did you?
Yeah.
They didn't let girls in my day. Well, they didn't let me in, actually. They didn't put me in for the final exam for Worcester because they thought I was too disruptive.
Well,
which I probably was.
Well, to be honest, I went there and I must say the food, no. Just no. No,
it wasn't ghastly, was it?
Oh, come on. Yes, it was. I've got to say, it really
Abbie,
was.
We can't have a contest here, but it can't have been as bad as mine.
It was, I would say it was probably maybe equal, okay. I would say we're equals on that one. But yeah, I did go to a boarding school, and to be honest, I really didn't enjoy it. And I was originally in mainstream, and I feel that yes, educationally, I did quite well in some respects, but socially, I would have been better off staying in mainstream, I think. So, like, do you think that it's better off for people with disabilities to be in mainstream, or
as a
really?
principal, I do. And then you have to adapt the principle to the specifics of the individual, because for some individuals, at least for a time, it makes sense for them to learn skills in residential. But as a principal, with one proviso, and I've learnt this over the years, because when I first started out as a counsellor, I campaigned like mad to get open education in Sheffield, and we do have it. There's a unit attached to one of our major comprehensive schools. So the youngsters are integrated in the school, but they have support systems. And that's what I've learned. You can't just throw a child with a disability into a mainstream school and just say survive. You've got to work with the teachers to make it happen well. You've got to have backup so that there's proper technical backup, and also teaching assistants. You've got, in other words, to put the kind of money in that it costs to send someone to a residential school. You've got to put that into making it work in open education, because otherwise you let everybody down, don't you?
Yeah, I completely agree.
So that's where I stand. As a principal, I think it's entirely right. Not least because you learn social skills in a way that you don't necessarily do at residential school. And secondly, it's very good for the rest of the population, because they learn that people with disabilities don't have two heads, and that they are just normal human beings who just need a helping hand.
I completely agree with you, because I felt that my social skills were not, when I moved back home, they weren't 100% to what they should be.
Well, I've been working on mine for the last 50 years. I'm not sure whether I've cracked it yet. So thank you very much, Abbie, for a tremendous interview, and I think we're now over to the audience.
So what would you kind of say in mainstream? Teachers have to facilitate for about 20 to 30 people, and they have to teach off of normal resources. You kind of get left behind because they can't enlarge it, because if they do, it goes on the page.
I think it was the point I was making earlier, wasn't it, that the critical thing here is to put in the technical and support resources to make it work. If they're not there, it's going to be a real uphill struggle, both for the individual young person, but also for the teachers. Because, as you've just described, they're going to have to think through how do I get this across. And I think that needs a bit of thinking through by both the school, and if it's in England and Wales, if it's part of a multi-academy trust, what they're doing to make that possible, to put in the facilities for enlarging the script if someone can see a little, the production of Braille if they're a Braille user. It does cost, but not. People get very frightened about the vast sums of money they think it's going to cost. Very often it's about thinking it through, being imaginative and creative, and the school's not going to be able to do it entirely on their own. So reaching out and getting the school to think about how they can bring in that support from outside. But if you've got a specific example, I always say this, and I mean it, I'm always very willing to help. had in the House of Lords a young 13-year-old just a short time ago who was at school in Norfolk, and he came to talk to me. And the one thing we agreed on all sorts, but the one thing that really struck me was his experience of trying to learn maths was very much like mine. And I'm very good at arithmetic, but I never did master algebra. And these days, you can't go on to do A-levels and university unless you have maths. I was lucky because that wasn't a barrier in those days. So there I was as education secretary for 4 years. I did get the right level at English, but I didn't ever get GCSE, well, it was called O-level. I never got the GCSE equivalent in maths. And I'd like us to be able to be a bit more flexible about that, because I think it's quite hard for people who can't see to do algebra and trigonometry.
Because I'm getting homework in kind of font that I can't read, and they can't make it bigger or get past papers because they've got a new course. So
they can't enlarge it.
No, they can only enlarge it to about a size 12.
And I don't get that. So is that still quite small?
Yeah, that is fairly small, and it's just. I said to the teacher, she said, "Well, I've enlarged." I said, "I still can't read it," and she couldn't say anything.
I wonder if we couldn't get the manufacturers involved. I mean, I don't know what equipment that they're using, but I would think that we should be able to approach them with the school and say, are you going to give us a helping hand? So what I'm going to do is to ask the organisers to let me have details, and I will contact you next week, and you can communicate with me, and you can ask your teachers if they mind me intervening and helping. Okay?
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Grace, and I just wanted to know your opinion on how you deal with people who deal with abuse against their disabilities.
Gosh, okay. Personal abuse because of disability. Well, we did introduce, when I was the Home Secretary, additional penalties for abuse, where there was a specific additional, whether it was race or gender or disability. I think the main thing is that we've just got to make it so unacceptable that you don't have to put up with it anymore. In personal terms, you're probably in a better position to tell me how to deal with it than I am, because from your question, you've obviously had some experience, or the people you know have had some experience, and it's a very long time since I ever had that, for the obvious reason that I've been in the public eye and I've been surrounded by substantial resources until recently, and that's protected me.
I think people should deal with it by kind of sharing their story and seeing if it'll help others with theirs, and seeing how other people dealt with theirs and sharing it with others.
And that is a good part of the internet and online, isn't it? Because people can share in a way that they wouldn't have been able to do. But when I was very tiny, when I was 3 months old, my mum found that I couldn't see, and as it happens, her head turned white because it was such a shock. But there weren't groups like we have here in the audience this afternoon that were able to connect up with each other, because it was just extremely hard. People were isolated across the country, and so there wasn't a parents' connectivity group or a young person's group. So now it's possible for people to communicate, learn from each other, reinforce and support each other, share stories, share solutions as well, which is what we're doing this afternoon. And I'm very grateful again to you, Abbie, for the interview and for doing so well, and my very best wishes to you for the future, but also to all of you for coming so far. Thank you very much indeed.
I think we'd all just like to say to yourself, David, thank you for coming along. I know from my point of view, You know, I've been blind since birth, British blind since birth, and it's been very enlightening for me. I often get told, you know, the things I'm doing are good for blind people. I don't think it's about me individually. I think it's about what you're saying as what one blind person does reflect onto the opinions of other people, about other blind people. Thank you to Abbie for doing the interview. Thank you for David for coming along. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
I think this experience has kind of helped me, give me a bit of motivation, because, you know, obviously David Blunkett was very kind of humble, and it kind of shocked me. I wasn't expecting that, so it's going to kind of help me a bit. Also, as well as advice when I asked him a question, it was very supportive, and I just thought it was a very good experience. Would definitely do it again. So yeah, thanks for having me.
This special podcast was made possible by the microphthalmia, anophthalmia and colour bonus support charity. The episode was written by Helen O'Brien and produced by Audio Ollie Harrison.